we have this an exciting development that could reshape actually the future of education in our country, as the cabinet has recently, approved a groundbreaking national pathway, from that allows, from the level of, grade 9 student to progress, with all the what is the process that have to be followed, progress away from vocational path to even a higher level of education, like maybe a degree and a PhD. So yes, student can now take hands-on technical education and progress all the way to the highest level of academic achievement. So with me today is the president of Namibia's National Student Organization, NANSO, Dorthea Nangolo. She's here to share her thoughts on this transformative move and how it could actually impact Namibia's students. Dorthea, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. All
right. So this is such a big development. What is your initial reaction to this new pathways?
Thank you very much for the question. I think initially, my reaction or NANSO's reaction is one where we are very happy. And I think as the interview goes or as the conversation goes, you realize why we say we are very happy. But we applaud the government at this point. I think it's a critical decision, that not only impacts the lives of the trainees, but also impacts the entire field, the entire TVET field, be it at the national level or at an international level.
So you have been powerful voice for students, and you once said that TVET contribute to our country and it is not valued. Do you feel like this decision is the first real step in changing this mindset?
Yes, definitely. I think a decision like this one is the biggest step, or is a huge leap towards ensuring that TVET is somewhat valued. And when I say valued, I say I speak of how there's this notion that we need to actively debunk as a country, where somebody who's in the TVET field is considered academically underperforming, or somebody is considered illiterate because they are in the TVET field.
Yeah.
But this comes from a lack of progression in the professional career, because once you compare TVET qualifications to other qualifications, for instance, you see that there's not much progression in terms of an academic level. So it's issues like this that already speak towards those problematic notions that perhaps TVET is not, or should be as undervalued as it is now. But to answer your question, I can say this is a major step towards addressing that and ensuring that our trainees, or those that are in the TVET field, are able to be on the same level academically as any other person who's doing a degree or any other qualification is able to progress.
Yeah. Let's talk about the 14-year-olds in grade 9. Is it too early to ask them to choose a vocational path? What are your thoughts on
that? I think it's never too early for somebody to choose a path. And I say this because with fields like TVET, the great thing about TVET is you need to be passionate about it. You need to have the skills. Although you've not gone through the official training as of yet, or the process of the training, as a learner who is leaning towards the TVET field is visible as early as grade 7. Because of what they are passionate about, what they are interested about. I think you are able to pick that up. So hence why the current setup now is a great setup. I think eventually, as time goes, we would want the same setup to be deployed across other fields, where a child as early as grade 9, for instance, is passionate about medicine. Everything they are doing is already then aligned to medicine, or is passionate about the law. Everything they are doing is aligned to the law. So it's easier for this child to progress at all other levels. So I think the current setup now would make sense. I think also for TVET is a very skill-centered profession. You need to actually know how to use your hands. You need to know how to create, how to build. And that can't start once you're 18 years old.
Yeah, yeah. As you said, this current setup would make sense. What do you think this will mean for students who have dropped out of school in the past? Will this make education more accessible for them as well?
I think this is a very tricky question, and I say it's tricky because not all learners who've dropped out of school are interested in TVET. You know, it comes back to the notion of we think of TVET as a dumping site for those that are underperforming in the academic space. No, those that have dropped out, not all of them want to go into TVET. So you shouldn't consider TVET as a dumping site to say those that have dropped out automatically will flood into TVET. Not at all.
Yeah.
We have those that perhaps have dropped out because the curriculum does not align with what they want. Those ones will get an opportunity to go into the TVET field. But those that simply don't want anything to do with TVET, will continue to be either on the streets or find expression elsewhere. But to answer your question, it improves access to education for those that are passionate about the TVET field or those that are in the TVET field. Because access to education in its all is not just accessing one level of education.
Yeah.
Access to education means all-round access to education. It means even going up to PhD level, master's level, that is access to education. So I think in that, yes, it then improves access to education for all our trainees or prospective trainees.
So one of the main goals is to reduce the failure rate. How do you think the TVET system can achieve this?
The failure rate, sorry, just to get your question, is it the failure rate for trainees or just generally?
Just generally. You know, the whole idea is actually when the plans, as I hear from the minister, as from the CEO of the NTA, is that one of the main goals is actually to reduce the failure rate. So my question is, how do you think the TVET system can achieve this?
All right, thank you for the question. Now I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think what we've discovered as NANSO is sometimes, and you'll see with the results that come out tomorrow, you'll see that there are patterns. There are patterns in terms of performance that indicate something. You'll have your ordinary level learners who are doing exceptionally well in other subjects. So you realize that they're doing exceptionally well in certain subjects and poorly in other subjects. I think all these things are pointing to a trend of perhaps learners are not aligning with this subject, or it simply does not align with their career aspirations.
Yeah.
So I think that increases the failure rate, because once you have a learner who's forced to go through AS level, who's passionate about carpentry, for instance, boiler making, now you're forcing this learner to go through AS level and to go do subjects like accounting, business studies, entrepreneurship, whatever the case may be. Maybe business studies and entrepreneurship are a terrible example because somebody in the TVET field would really use this subject.
Yeah.
So maybe accounting, life science, or whatever the case may be. Once you force this learner to go up to AS level doing this subject, if there's something we've learned as NANSO, is passion does not lie. If students or learners are uninterested in that field, they don't have any dedication towards it. So I think some of those issues also contribute, because I think the TVET system is also set up in such a brilliant way that the teaching is very much practical. So when somebody aligns with practical teaching, they may not perform too well with theoretical teaching or teaching that requires a lot of theory, if I make sense.
Yeah.
So hence why you see that there's underperformance there. And you will realize that some of these learners will go on to do TVET courses and they'll do exceptionally well. Cum laude, they will end up leading and topping their classes. And it, proves that TVET is not for underperforming people. It's just sometimes there's a mismatch in the learner's passion or what they're interested in.
Yeah. So in talking about mismatch, how important is it for education, now we're talking about TVET, to align with industry's need? Do you think this new model is the solution?
Definitely. We very earlier on last year, NANSO declared, 2024 actually, NANSO declared that TVET is most definitely the future, if not amongst the future fields that will be leading this country's economy. And I say this because the world where we stand right now requires human beings or citizens to create, to manufacture, and to build. With the fourth industrial revolution already on the rise, as a country, a developing country like Namibia, we must be able to create, we must be able to contribute, We have industries like green hydrogen that requires people from the TVET industry. It requires people that are skilled. So I think it comes back to a point of TVET is one of our most critical fields in this country, and we've undervalued it for so long. And I say critical not just in the aspect of the future or the potential that TVET holds, but right now, with the low unemployment rate, train a brilliant young person, give them a toolbox, give them opportunity, and you'll see how they create employment for themselves and other people. I think that already just shows you. If you look at people who've been trained at vocational training centers, how they conduct themselves and conduct their business and how they survive on a day-to-day basis, you'll be very impressed that somebody has studied carpentry, they've opened their workshop with absolutely no capital, no support whatsoever, a workshop under a tree, but they're able to provide for their children. Now imagine capacitating this person, giving them a proper workshop, and giving them 4 or 5 other people that they can employ. Imagine how far and what that does for that person and for the economy of the country. That's just a practical example of the potential of the TVET industry.
So you just mentioned unemployment, and there has been a lot of talk about higher unemployment rates for graduates in Namibia. Do you think this new pathway will help address that issue?
Definitely, like I said prior, the TVET industry or TVET in its own capacitates its graduates or its trainees with skills that are perhaps difficult to find in other fields or other professions, right? Because lawyers, for instance, we are trained at university level to be employable immediately. Lawyers are trained to say you need to, once you're done with your degree, you go and find attachment as a candidate legal practitioner. You're already in its own, the first starting point is you need to be employed somewhere. Then you need to practice for a few years or whatever the case may be before you can start your own law firm. But for trainees who've done TVET, immediately upon receiving your qualification, you can go and create your workshop. You can semi-formal, businesses. You can go and do something with your skills. That's how easy it is for them. They don't have unnecessary bureaucracy in terms of when can you actually deploy and practice your skills. If you're a carpenter, you start in your house, in your own backyard. So I think that already says a lot about how it creates employment. And I don't think the challenge with people seeing that TVET creates employment is people view employment as somebody who receives a paycheck. So when they think of employment, they only see a paycheck and they see a formal employer and an employee. But they don't see somebody who's under the tree with 2 or 3 people assisting them. Making tables and chairs. They don't see that as employment. And that's where the challenge is as a country. We won't see the potential of TVET if we don't change our view of employment, or at least allow those who've done TVET subjects or who've been trained to then be able to meet the requirements of formal employment by capacitating them.
Now, there is a mention of phased implementation of this reform. Do you think the pace of this transformation would be quicker enough?
I think with every transformation, it takes time so that it's not rushed. And government has shown that sometimes implementation in phases works because you are able to see through the piloting of the decision, you're able to see what works and what doesn't work. You're able to see and follow your first cohort and see how that works. Where it doesn't work, you then have an opportunity to fix it. So I think it gives us an opportunity as a country to assess the possibilities, to redefine what works. Because remember, at TVET, there are challenges of, not professionalizing it, but there are challenges of advancing TVET to the level of PhD, for instance, or masters, because there's a question of, do we have trainers that have reached that level, who have PhDs, how many are they that are professors in the field that can then teach? How many of them are skilled, particularly in certain areas? And then you also have the issue of the infrastructure and resources, because you cannot say you are training somebody and they are studying to become a doctor in boiler making, for instance, but you don't have the literature in the country.
Yeah.
You don't have the specified tools in the country. And one of our challenges now is we don't have enough tools. Our tools are outdated.
Yeah.
So if you go to our TVET centers, you realize that our tools are extremely outdated. So there's that issue as well.
Yeah, the minister also admitted that not all TVET centers are ready for this change yet. What are NANSO's biggest concern about the rollout?
I think our biggest concern, like I said in my previous answer, is that there's an issue of capacitation and readiness, like the minister has said. Because if you're rolling out something like this, you need to ensure that all our centers are ready, so that there's no gap. There's no gap in terms of access. So you need to make sure that the tools are up to date, the lecture halls are up to date. You have specialized teaching staff. So you need your professors. Where do you get them from? The expenses around there. Then you also need to update and upgrade the curriculum heavily, because if somebody is able to grow up to a master's level, then the certificate must also then advance. The degree must advance. The master's program must advance. And then you can get to PhD. So these are all our concerns. But NANSO is never an organization that focuses on the bad side of things or focuses on the negative. We always want to focus on the positive. So with time, we know that these issues can be addressed. I know NTA is doing a remarkable job as well in trying to bridge these gaps. So I think as we roll out the decision, we'll then see what works and what doesn't work. But right now, those are the pressing issues that we're also concerned about.
And how will NANSO be involved in making sure student voices are heard as these changes are implemented over the coming years?
I think NANSO's role is our role is to act as the ombudsman of the students without any prejudice. Our job is to ensure that students' rights are enforced and that students' rights are upheld, and that government is held accountable for their decisions. So our job is always to be the watchdog, to ensure that this thing is being implemented properly, that there are no questions of access, but you also don't have a situation where somebody is then going to do a master's degree, but the master's degree is useless or is valueless because of the process of the input process of getting there. So you don't want somebody who has a master's degree from VTC, but this master's degree is not recognized internationally. That's not what we want. So it's also then monitoring and ensuring that it's a proper process, because this is a profession. It must be recognized as a profession, and it cannot be watered down. So I think that is our job.
Yeah. So what kind of feedback have you heard from students around the country? Are they excited about this shift in education?
I think the students are very happy, especially those in the field. They're very excited because their challenge was always they do TVET, and then when they want to then advance to other educational levels, they end up doing other qualifications. So they end up going to perhaps do something else, in order to get to that master's level or PhD level. So it's quite unfair, but they're very happy that now they can remain within their field and grow within their field.
Yeah. Now, if you could give one piece of advice to a ministerial committee planning this, what would it be, coming from the student point of view?
I think the advice would be not to exclude the trainees. NANSO does not take lightly the exclusion of young people in decisions that affect the lives of young people. I think it was quite unfortunate that we were excluded from the task force that had to deal with fully subsidized education. We don't accept mere consultation. We are the stakeholders. These things affect us, so we don't recognize mere consultation. Consulting us for 30 minutes to us does not mean anything to us. But including and appointing a trainee, an active trainee who's at VTC, NIMT, or whatever the case may be on that committee is what is important to us, because that person can speak on the issues of young people, they can speak on the needs of the trainees. Yeah. But a committee of just professionals speaking about things that affect us, for us, that is not fair and we don't recognize it. So I think even the team that is working on this, the ministry, must be able to bring young people on the table. Consultation for us is not inclusion. Consultation is merely an administrative process. With everything you have to consult. Even us as NANSO, we consult each other on a daily. But it doesn't mean we are included. You are being consulted. But once you're part of the decision making, that is inclusion. Consultation is a recommendation, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
It's not a decision, it's a recommendation. So, but once you include us, we are able to be part of the decision making and shape the decision. So I think my advice is straightforward. Do not exclude the students and the trainees.
Yeah.
It becomes redundant for you to only consult us when you need to consult us on a certain aspect. But it's important to include us throughout.
Yeah. So when you look at this whole thing in terms of big picture, in terms of the national economy, how do you think this vocational education pathway will benefit Namibia in the long
term? I think, like I stated earlier, we are looking at growth in terms of economic growth. This is a very critical industry.
Yeah.
Especially where we are now in the world is we require a citizenship that is skilled, that is able to create and build, number one. But also TVET, like I said when I spoke about unemployment and the creation of employment, TVET plays a very critical role. So I think in the long run, you have national development because you'll have people who are skilled. You know, our challenge now is we have engineers, we are graduating our own engineers here in the country, from UNAM, from NAS. But we don't have people that are using their hands. So if there's a certain machine that needs to be built, you can have an engineer draw up the plan, but you'll have to import somebody to come and create this machine.
Yeah.
And that is a major issue. It's a major challenge for us. So I think importing skills is what is very problematic for us as a country. So with TVET, we're able to at least close the gap on some of this skills imports to then ensure that our own people are able to build and are able to create in our country. But beyond that, TVET on its own continues to remain a very, very critical field in our country. So advancing TVET already now and professionalizing it would really go a long way for us.
All right. And lastly, Dorothy, what message do you have for students who are thinking about entering now the TVET system under this new pathway?
I think it's, first of all, just to wish them the very best of luck. I think, again, to debunk the notion that TVET is for people to go and be lazy or is considered an underperforming field academically. I think now with this advancement is they have an opportunity to advance their qualifications.
Yeah.
So they must take advantage of it. Don't go and just do a certificate when you can go up to do your degree or your master's in TVET. So really to encourage them to grow academically in the field, but also to give back value. Every decision, every commitment that government makes to education is an investment that the entire country is making. So every investment must have some sort of output. It must have some sort of benefit for the greater country. So I think this is how I want students to look at it, to say there's been an investment. How do they pay back the rest of the country? How do they deploy their skills? How do they advance their skills, you know? And I say this because NANSO has a particularly good relationship with trainees. Even now we'll be launching our Fix My School campaign for the year, where we are fixing the broken infrastructure at the schools. And trainees continue to be of great assistance. So I think through activities like that, our trainees give back. They give back or they pay back the investment that the country has made in their field.